December 7, 1941, 7:55 a.m. The first Japanese bombs fall on Pearl Harbor. Within 2 hours, the U.S. Pacific Fleet is crippled. 2,403 Americans dead, 1,178 wounded, 8 battleships sunk or damaged, 188 aircraft destroyed. President Roosevelt calls it a date which will live in infamy. America enters World War II united in outrage. The surprise attack galvanizes a nation. But within years, questions emerge. How could such a massive attack come as a surprise? Why were so many ships concentrated in one place? Where were the aircraft carriers? Some begin to whisper, what if Roosevelt knew? What if he let it happen? The theory claims Roosevelt wanted war with Japan. He needed a dramatic event to overcome isolationist sentiment. He had advance warning of the attack. He deliberately sacrificed the fleet to provoke America into war. For 80 years, this conspiracy theory has persisted. Books, documentaries, websites, each claiming to prove Roosevelt's treachery. But here's the reality. Every serious historian who has examined the evidence concludes the theory is false. Pearl Harbor was a surprise, a failure of intelligence, a military disaster, not a conspiracy. This is the story of how a tragedy became a conspiracy theory.
Before examining the conspiracy theory, we need to understand what actually happened. The road to war. By 1941, U.S.-Japan relations had deteriorated for years. The conflict. Japan's expansion in Asia conflicted with American interests. 1937, Japan invaded China. 1940, Japan occupied French Indochina. U.S. responded with economic sanctions. July 1941, U.S. froze Japanese assets, imposed oil embargo. Japan faced a choice: withdraw from China or secure resources by force. They chose force. The Japanese plan. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto conceived a bold strategy: a surprise attack on the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. Goals: destroy American battleships, buy time for Japanese expansion in Southeast Asia, demoralize America into negotiating peace. Yamamoto knew, I can run wild for 6 months. After that, I have no expectation of success. The attack was a gamble, a desperate roll of the dice. November 26, 1941, the fleet sailed. The Japanese strike force departed. 6 aircraft carriers, 414 aircraft, supporting warships. Total, 33 vessels. They sailed under radio silence through remote northern Pacific routes, avoiding shipping lanes. Destination: 230 miles north of Oahu. December 7, 1941, the attack. 7:02 a.m. Radar operators on Oahu detect incoming aircraft. They report it. They're told to ignore it, probably American B-17s arriving from California. 7:55 a.m. First wave strikes, 183 aircraft. Targets: Battleship Row, airfields, naval facilities. The ships were moored in pairs, sitting ducks. 8:54 a.m. Second wave, 167 aircraft. 9:55 p.m. Attack ends. The devastation. Arizona, exploded, sunk, 1,177 crew killed. Oklahoma, capsized, 429 dead. West Virginia, sunk, 106 dead. California, sunk, 100 dead. Nevada, beached to avoid blocking the harbor. 3 other battleships damaged. 188 aircraft destroyed, most on the ground. But aircraft carriers were at sea. They survived. Oil storage tanks untouched, crucial for future operations. Repair facilities mostly intact. The American response. The attack unified America. Isolationist sentiment evaporated overnight. December 8th, Congress declared war, only one dissenting vote. Within months, millions enlisted, industry mobilized. America became the arsenal of democracy. Japan had awakened a sleeping giant.
Almost immediately after Pearl Harbor, questions arose. How could this happen? The political context. Before Pearl Harbor, America was deeply divided about entering World War II. Isolationists argued, Europe's war isn't America's problem. Stay out, stay safe. World War I was a mistake. Don't repeat it. Interventionists argued, Nazi Germany threatens democracy everywhere. Britain needs help. Eventually, we'll have to fight. Roosevelt wanted to help Britain, but public opinion opposed war. Pearl Harbor solved his problem. Instantly, America was united. The conspiracy theory forms. Within years, Roosevelt's critics asked, did he orchestrate this? The theory's claims. Roosevelt wanted war but couldn't get public support. He provoked Japan with the oil embargo, forcing them to attack. He had advance warning through intelligence intercepts. He deliberately positioned the fleet as bait. He withheld warnings from Pearl Harbor commanders. Aircraft carriers were moved to save the important ships. The sacrifice was calculated. Old battleships for public outrage. The evidence cited. Intercepted Japanese messages. U.S. had broken Japanese diplomatic codes. Magic. Conspiracy theorists claim these revealed attack plans. The missing carriers. All 3 Pacific Fleet carriers were conveniently at sea. Suspicious. Warnings ignored. Multiple intelligence indicators were dismissed. Incompetence or conspiracy? The embargo. Roosevelt's economic pressure forced Japan to attack. Deliberate provocation? Congressional investigations. Multiple post-war investigations examined Pearl Harbor. Conspiracy theorists claim these were cover-ups. Political motivation. Who promoted this theory? 1940s and 50s, Roosevelt's political enemies. Isolationists who'd opposed intervention. 1960s and 70s, anti-government sentiment during the Vietnam era. Modern era. General conspiracy theory culture, distrust of government. The theory appeals to those who believe governments lie, leaders sacrifice citizens for political goals, official stories hide sinister throughs. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The Pearl Harbor conspiracy theory has none that withstands scrutiny. Claim 1. Roosevelt had advance warning. The facts. Yes, U.S. had broken Japanese diplomatic codes. But what Magic Intercept showed, Japan-U.S. relations deteriorating. Diplomatic deadlines. War was likely. What they didn't show, no mention of Pearl Harbor as a target. No attack date. No operational details. The Japanese military used different codes that weren't broken until later. Knowing war is coming isn't the same as knowing when and where. Claim 2. The fleet was deliberately positioned as bait. The facts. Pearl Harbor was considered a safe location. Military logic. Pacific Fleet moved from California to Pearl Harbor in 1940 as a deterrent to Japan. Pearl was closer to Japanese waters. Concentrated fleet was more defensible in theory. Standard peacetime berthing, not a trap. If Roosevelt wanted ships sunk, why concentrate the entire battleship force? Why not scatter them?
Claim 3. Aircraft carriers were moved to safety. The facts. The carrier's absence was operational, not conspiratorial. Enterprise, delivering aircraft to Wake Island. Lexington, delivering aircraft to Midway. Saratoga, West Coast for maintenance. These were routine missions. Carriers were often at sea. Moreover, if Roosevelt wanted outrage, why save carriers? In 1941, battleships were considered more important. Public wouldn't distinguish. Claim 4. Warnings were suppressed. The facts. Multiple warnings existed, but they were vague, no specific time or target. Common. War warnings were frequent, crying wolf effect. Misinterpreted. Most expected attacks on the Philippines or Southeast Asia. December 7 morning, radar detected incoming aircraft. Operators reported it. Junior officer assumed they were American B-17s. He dismissed the report. This was a mistake, a tragic error, not a conspiracy. If it's a conspiracy, why would you rely on junior officers? If there was a plot to suppress warnings, wouldn't you ensure senior officers were in on it? The randomness argues against conspiracy. Claim 5. Congressional investigations were cover-ups. The facts. Multiple investigations examined Pearl Harbor. Roberts Commission, 1941 to 1942. Army Pearl Harbor Board, 1944. Navy Court of Inquiry, 1944. Joint Congressional Investigation, 1945 to 1946. Multiple others. Results. All found failures of intelligence and judgment. None found conspiracy. Commanders in Hawaii were blamed for unpreparedness. Some were court-martialed. If it were a cover-up, why investigate at all? Why blame commanders if Roosevelt orchestrated it? The evidence that doesn't exist. If the conspiracy theory were true, we'd expect documentary evidence, orders to commanders, communications coordinating the plot, planning documents. None exist. Testimony. Someone involved would have talked. Deathbed confessions. Whistleblowers. Hasn't happened in 80-plus years. Physical evidence. Proof that carriers were deliberately moved, that warnings were suppressed systemically. Nothing. The Occam's razor test. Which is more likely? A conspiracy theory? Roosevelt orchestrated an elaborate plot involving hundreds of people, kept it secret for 80-plus years, sacrificed 2,400 Americans, risked the Pacific Fleet, all to manipulate public opinion. Or historical consensus. Intelligence agencies failed to share information. Military commanders underestimated Japanese capabilities. Warnings were misinterpreted. America was caught unprepared. The simpler explanation is usually correct.
Despite overwhelming evidence against it, the Pearl Harbor conspiracy theory endures. Why? Psychological factors. Pattern recognition. Humans see patterns even in random events. Coincidences become evidence. Distrust of authority. Government lies about some things, therefore must lie about everything. Desire for simple explanations. Roosevelt planned it is simpler than multiple intelligence failures, poor coordination, underestimation of enemy capabilities. These are the lessons that matter. How to prevent intelligence failures, how to avoid complacency, how to respect enemy capabilities. Conspiracy theories distract from learning these lessons. The danger of false narratives. Believing false conspiracy theories has consequences. Erodes trust in legitimate institutions, in expertise, in factual history. Promotes cynicism. If Roosevelt sacrificed 2,400 Americans, why trust any leader? Spreads to other areas.
Once someone accepts one baseless conspiracy, they're primed for others. Dishonors victims. The 2,403 who died weren't sacrifices in a political plot. They were casualties of war. So, what really happened at Pearl Harbor? The historical reality is Japan attacked. America was unprepared. Intelligence failed. Commanders made mistakes. 2,403 Americans died. It was tragic, preventable, but not a conspiracy. Why it matters. The Pearl Harbor conspiracy theory is a case study in how misinformation persists despite evidence. The pattern is, tragic event occurs, questions arise about how it happened, some propose sinister explanation, evidence debunks the theory, theory persists anyway. This pattern applies to many conspiracy theories. Critical thinking. When evaluating conspiracy theories, ask, what's the evidence? Not speculation, not coincidences. Actual documented evidence. 2. Who benefits? From the conspiracy? From promoting the theory? 3. Is it plausible? Could hundreds keep a secret for decades? Would leaders really sacrifice their own citizens? 4. What's the simpler explanation? Conspiracy or incompetence? Malice or mistakes? 5. What do experts say? Not independent researchers, actual historians with access to archives. The real story. Pearl Harbor's real story is dramatic enough without conspiracy. A rising power challenging an established one. Diplomatic failure. A desperate gamble. A surprise attack. A nation's awakening. Heroism amid chaos. Recovery from disaster. Ultimate victory. That's the story. It doesn't need embellishment or dark plots. Honoring the memory. The 2,403 who died at Pearl Harbor deserve better than being cast as pawns in a political conspiracy. They were sailors on ships, soldiers at bases, civilians in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Real people with families who mourned them. They died in a surprise attack by an enemy nation, not in a plot by their own president. The lesson. Pearl Harbor teaches us about the importance of preparedness, the cost of underestimating